Some spirits are restless, others are angry, and some just want to be heard. At Paranormal M, we give them a voice. Subscribe and listen closely. I was never alone. When my grandma died, I inherited her old farmhouse. It's a beat-up place, way out in the middle of nowhere, creepily quiet. My parents moved us out when I was like 5. They never really said why, and honestly, I barely remember anything about it. So when I went back there alone to start cleaning it up, first night I swear I heard footsteps above me in the attic. I checked and nothing there. Second night I heard whispering, like actual whispering. It stopped the second I opened the attic door. Third night I found this old photo tucked behind a dresser. It was my family, me, Mom and Dad, and some other person standing behind us, pale-faced and with a weird smile. We don't have a fourth family member. I called my mom and kinda laughing at first. But when I told her about the photo, she just went totally silent. But then she said real quietly, "We never locked the attic. We just never opened it." Then the call dropped, and I heard the footsteps again. Ask Reddit. I lived in an old World War I military officer's house. I was with my family, and this house was built at the turn of the century. It was big and drafty, so it was full of creaks and groans. But I was not one to buy into the supernatural. One night I was at home alone sleeping. I woke up to a loud blast of this distorted noise coming from downstairs. I had no idea what the hell it could be. So I went downstairs and I found my dad's hi-fi system turned on to full blast on some untuned radio station. I thought this was weird because nobody ever switches to the radio, as mainly the record player and CD player got used. So I turned the volume all the way down, switched the settings back over to the CD player input. I turned the system off by pressing the button so it passes the descent and sticks out in the off position. I do a walk around downstairs, just to make sure nobody was home trying to mess with me. After about a half hour, I was still a little bit nerve-wracked and having a hard time falling asleep. Suddenly, that loud blast of distortion started up again, and I felt that sharp rush of adrenaline in my chest. I hesitated and I came to terms to what could be down there. I headed down the stairs slowly. Sure enough, the radio was switched back on with the volume to the max, tuned to some whacked-out station. I said out loud something along the lines of, "I know you're here and trying to tell me something. I just want you to know that I respect you and the house. I don't want any trouble and I don't want you to harm my family." I proceeded to unplug the radio and I went back to my room. Pretty much waited until morning. And from then on, never happened again. Moved out not too long after. But I kinda get the whole supernatural ghost thing now. Ask Reddit. One time, me and my friend were in our car late at night. It was after a Whataburger run. Whataburger. It was about 3 a.m. and we're chilling, eating in the car and joking around. Don't ask why we were up so late. It was sophomore year of college and we were pulling an all-nighter for Lord knows why. But anyways, we pull into her apartment complex. Park perpendicular to the forest surrounding majority of her complex. As soon as I put my car in park, I felt everything go cold. And I promise you, I felt something in the air. Keep seeing this thing move in the forest out of the corner of my eye. I think it's just the wind and branches. Finally, I'm like, what the fuck is that? And so I look closer, and it's two huge yellow eyes staring out directly into my eyes. How is it that when I finally look harder, we make direct eye contact? This thing was staring at my eyes for a long time, I just know it. So I'm like, oh crap, there's a man in the forest, to my friend. And we both think it's a police officer at first. I don't know why we thought that, but once it showed itself, we knew it was no police officer. But then as soon as I made eye contact with it, this thing starts walking out very quickly, coming straight for my car. Keep in mind, my car was on, so my lights were on too. So this thing knew that I would see it coming. It steps out, and its arms and legs were way too long. Looked like a creature trying to be human, but just wasn't quite pulling it off. The proportions and speed of the movements was all just too wrong and off. I believe fully this wasn't a human with its huge and hollow yellow eyes. It never broke eye contact with me, ever, and I drove a small Volkswagen Bug at the time, which I know is a small car, but this creature was towering above my car. It was literally the boogeyman. The closer I looked at him, the more scary it got. The more scared I got, the bigger it grew. Its face was covered by what looked like, and I'm not kidding, a mask of a human face. But the thing's eyes were definitely its own. Finally, I snapped out of my terror, reversed out of my spot so fast, and by that time he had made it all the way to the front of my car and was touching the hood. I wish I'd ran over it, honestly. But when I looked back in my rearview mirror to see what was going on, it was standing in the spot I'd just been parked in and waving and staring straight into my eyes through the mirror. Don't know what this was, and I've heard lots of things. I think it was a demon for sure, but that's just me. Something really odd happened outside my backyard window. I don't know what just happened. I was staying home with my younger brother today. My parents went out to get some groceries, and my cousin, who also lives with us, left for the gym. I rent the room downstairs. It's the only room on the first floor, and it's super close to the kitchen. I'm not very into religion or ghosts, but I definitely believe in them. However, today I just felt very uneasy and uncomfortable and on edge. I was pretty weirded out by the house. Didn't feel very safe either. I tried to play it cool by thinking it was all in my imagination, and nothing was actually there. But I was especially uneasy going into the kitchen. And I was getting thirsty, and I got the courage to finally go get something. Now, my kitchen has a big rectangular window right on top of the sink, which happens to be in front of the fridge, and this window has no curtains, so at night you really can't see outside. But outside can see you. I felt very uncomfortable. I couldn't take my eyes off of the window. I think that was because I felt like something was staring at me. Told myself I was just being silly and paranoid by being so scared, and turned my back to grab some ice. As soon as I did, I heard the loudest bang outside the wall and window. It sounded like somebody had took both their fists and punched the wall super hard. I immediately froze. Yelled my brother's name because I was afraid somebody was trying to break into the house. And he's 8 years old, so I ran to his room and locked the door so I could protect us, somehow, I guess, if we were getting robbed. I noticed the lock wasn't working, and I was barely breathing at this point, pretty much having a panic attack. I was terrified and immediately told him to call our mom and his iPad. I'd left my phone downstairs and I was freaking out. And here's where it gets creepier. We have a camera security system, 4 cameras in total. And one of them is outside in our little backyard, which is fenced in, by the way. And that was the only camera that wasn't letting them see the previous footage. And at this point, I told my brother to go with me. We hid in my room, which has a double lock, till my mom got back. I wasn't sure if this was someone or something, but because of the way I felt all day, I feel like something was trying to scare me. Strange dream and mysterious lights. Last night, I had a dream that really shook me. I dreamed my garage was on fire. The fear and distress felt so real that I basically got woken up by it. Still a bit shaken when I got up to use the bathroom. Well, I got back to bed and I looked out the window from my second-floor room. And that's when I saw something really unusual. At the height of the trees, not up in the sky, there were long, straight lines of light. They were moving slowly one after the other, almost like a procession. The lights lasted for about 30 seconds before they disappeared completely. I wasn't fascinated, I was more taken aback, almost hiding as I tried to figure out what I was seeing. I wanted to grab my phone, take a picture, but by the time I thought to do it, it was already too late. I was fully awake and lucid, and I know it wasn't part of a dream. I even Googled to see if I could find something, well, something similar to what it was that I saw. Nothing seemed to match. I don't know if the dream and the lights were connected, but the whole experience has left me with a lot of questions. Has anybody seen anything like this before? I'd love to hear your thoughts or experiences. I used to have a friend as a child, but it wasn't really a friend. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, I had what most people would probably call an imaginary friend. But looking back, it didn't really feel like that at all. She wasn't somebody I played with. I didn't feed her pretend meals or make her part of games. She didn't even have a name. I just called her Girl. I don't remember what she looked like exactly. I think she was just white, like a white figure. Not really detailed. So I do remember clearly. It's like the feeling of her presence. She was always there, and sometimes she would watch me while I played. Sometimes I felt like she was talking to me, but not in a way I can recall specific words or messages. It was more like a quiet awareness that somebody was near me. But it wasn't scary, not at all. I never felt afraid of her. I stopped seeing her around the age of 10. I don't remember a moment when she left. She just wasn't there anymore. And interestingly, I never missed her. I didn't feel sad or confused, and it was like she had quietly come and quietly gone. I only recently told a friend about this. She suggested it could have been a ghost or a spirit, which honestly kind of shook me. I never thought about it that way. It's weird now to realize that she didn't feel like somebody I created in my head. I just accepted her being there like she belonged there. The strangest part to me was that she had no name and no made-up personality. I've also always been the kind of person that animals are drawn to. People have even told me I give off witchy vibes, or that I have a strong energy, whatever that means. Has anybody else experienced something like this, or a presence in childhood that didn't feel like a game or a creation of imagination, but more like someone who was quietly with you? If you're lucky, that's your animal. My sister used to see me as a shadow at night. I found an old text I wrote years ago, right after one of the strangest episodes of my childhood. I recently reread it and felt the need to give that story new form, to organize it better and revisit it more clearly. Well, that fear that in a way still lives inside me. What you're about to hear is more mature of a rewrite, but the fear, that stays the same. During our childhood, my sister Alice and I were very close. We slept in the same room and laughed together and shared toys and fears. That lasted until I was about 6 or 7 and got my own room. It was like a defining moment because along with the sense of freedom and independence came something strange. I remember exactly the first time something felt off. Alice said to me, as casually as could be, "Lucas, why do you keep watching me at night and never say anything?" "What? I never did that, Alice." "Stop lying. Seriously, stop standing at the door staring at me." I thought it was some kind of a joke, a childish attempt to scare me. She never brought it up again, but a few nights later I started waking up to her screaming, "Get out, Lucas, leave me alone." And I'd been asleep, always asleep. At first, I tried not to give it too much importance. Kids have wild imaginations, I thought. But over time, it started getting to me. Why was she seeing me standing at the door? What did that even mean? Recently, now that we're older, she told me everything. Her eyes were full of tears as if she were reliving every moment. She said that for about a whole year, she saw me standing there every single night, silent and shadowy, just watching. It was me, but at the same time, it wasn't. She swore it was real. She said my body looked like it was covered in a dense shadow, as if the hallway light refused to touch me. I never responded and I never moved. I just stood there, a human silhouette with my face. The last appearance was the worst. "Get away, Lucas." "Nothing." "Seriously, stop it." Silence. "Get out." And the figure started walking towards her. She screamed for help and my dad rushed into the room and she was begging, "Dad, get Lucas out of here. He tried to attack me." And then came the sentences that chilled me to the bone. "Alice, Lucas is asleep with me." After that, the figure never appeared again. But Alice was never the same. She started sleeping with the light on, or in our parents' room. She said she developed a technique to turn the light off with her eyes closed, just so she wouldn't have to see me standing there. Even now, years later, she still says a prayer every night. And mind you, we're agnostic. But she doesn't sleep without praying, whether it's for caution or fear or trauma. And me, well, I still wonder what that was. I never saw anything. I never felt anything. But knowing that someone or something used my face to terrify my sister, it leaves me with an unease I carry to this day. Was something trying to pretend to be me, or did something inside me leave at night without my knowing? I don't have any answers, just chills. Some call it a doppelganger. Others talk about skinwalkers. Maybe it's just a child's imagination, but if so, why am I still afraid to look in the mirror at night? I just hope it was her imagination playing tricks on her. I'm pretty sure my house is haunted. Here's some things that have happened within a week from each other, after probably a year of no activity. So around a week ago, sitting on my bed playing Overwatch. And how my room works is that my bed is right in front of my door. There's about a 3 or 4 foot gap between my door and my bed. Anyways, I just loaded into a round and had my headphones on. I heard this loud clapping noise right behind my left ear, the side facing the gap from the door in bed. I snapped my head around as I jumped because it startled me, and I live with my younger brother, so when I don't see anything behind me, I check around the gap thinking it was my little brother trying to scare me. I didn't see anyone. He wasn't anywhere in my room, and I never once saw the door open and close, or even heard it open. A thunderstorm was happening around this time, but I sat and listened to the next 3 lightning strikes. None of them sounded anything like a clap or as loud. My left side, where I heard the clapping, was also away from my window from the way I was sitting. So I seriously doubt it was thunder. The next story happened to me 2 days ago. I was walking in from taking out the trash. I'm going to start this out by saying that I always close my back door anytime I go take out the trash. I never do because anytime I do, my dad screams at me to close it to not let the air out, or he gets up and closes it on his own. Anyways, I'm walking back up and down, and looking down. Forgot why, maybe checking for lizards on my back porch. Don't step on mine. And I hear my back door knob twist and then start opening slowly on its own. First, I think it's one of my brothers, and I have 2. Maybe my parents. I open the door and I don't see anybody. I don't hear anyone walking away or closing a door. Nobody was in the kitchen, the living room, or anywhere in sight. Also, before anybody says this, no, my house isn't built on any type of slant or hill, so my house isn't slightly crooked or anything. I have a lot of other paranormal stories, so I might make a post about them one day. Weird walk. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I live in a small suburban city close to Warsaw. Today, after I finished studying, my dad advised me to go on a walk so I could sleep better. I'm a very active person, so I've listened to him and went out. It was around 8:30 when I left my home. I wanted to go by my basic route, how I do it always, and did. Right after I closed the gate, I took out my AirPods, and they were dead. Thought that it's a sign that I should go and listen to sounds of the trees and wind. When I was walking, I had a weird feeling like someone or something was watching me. So I was looking behind me every time I heard something. It's really strange because I never fear like anything, but it was different. Went by my local church and I saw a priest. We both exchanged a few words. My walk after was completely normal. However, I still felt a bit anxious. When I turned into the main street of my town, I saw 2 people walking in front of me. They were walking straight as I was. I was about 200, 300 meters behind them. I then cut the distance. I think I was about 30 or 40 feet behind them. That's when the whole situation gets creepy. I don't understand it. Suddenly I heard a dog barking behind me. I turned my head to see the dog, and right after I turned my head in the previous position, I didn't see these 2 people. There was a turn to the right, but I didn't see them as I walked past it. They couldn't have gone straight because I would have seen them. Another theoretical option was that they went by the gate, but the weirdest thing is that there was no sound of closing. Does anybody have any idea what might I have encountered? I'm going to pray today so that whatever it was won't try to find me. The Marasite. It lives in your body, feasting on your mind. The first time I noticed it at the time was at my mom's birthday. It was raining, the wind and water slapped against my window as the wind wipers clung on for dear life, desperately trying to erase the rain. Got out of the car, excitedly standing on the front doorstep with presents in hand. I gave the door 3 sharp raps when I was met with my mom's sleep-deprived face. Eye bags hung below her baby blue eyes, and her matted blonde grayish hair hung sorrowfully down her shoulders. "Hi, son, why are you here?" I cut her off with an excited yell. "Happy birthday, Mom." She stared at me in confusion, as if somebody had just told her that I wasn't her son. "What do you mean?" she exclaimed. A tinge of worry stained her words. "Isn't it your birthday?" I questioned, pretty perplexed. "No, don't tell me you forgot my birthday. Did you hit your head?" "No, it's your birthday today, isn't it?" I said. Annoyance flushed my brain. "No, it's not. Go home. It's pouring down. What are you, insane?" I accepted my losses. I walked back to my car. It was her birthday today. I was sure of it. I felt wrong, and something was definitely wrong. Deep inside my body, I chalked it up to a simple mistake, but deep down I knew something was wrong. The same night I sat down on my couch, I listened to the now gentle rain patter against the glass panes. I felt myself dozing off to sleep. I knew nothing. I couldn't walk or talk or even speak. I stumbled around in a daze, clueless of where I was or who I even was. I don't know anything, but I knew what I felt, and it was true fear. I clung on to anything I'd get my hands on. I didn't know how to use them. Dishes clattered to the floor. I slipped and fell, and I woke drenched in sweat. I clutched my heart as if it would burrow out of my chest. Stumbled up off the couch when I spotted something. It was me. It wasn't me, but it looked like me. Copied my movements, but it wasn't me. I watched my double. My mouth became intensely dry and the blood drained from my face. I raised a hand and it copied. I darted to my bedroom and slammed the door behind me, nearly knocking it off of its hinges. I hastily shut the deadlock. I breathed a sigh of relief. I lay in my bed completely still, too scared to move or make any sound. I tossed and turned for the rest of the night. The rest of the week went as normal, other than the dates and work I had oddly forgotten about. I'd arrived home from work one night. The golden sunlight poured through my windows when I noticed somebody pulling up in my driveway. I stared in confusion as I watched a person get out of the car. They looked familiar, but I couldn't place who it was that they were. I watched as they speedily walked up my garden path. I watched in horror as the woman pulled out a key and unlocked my front door. How did they have my house key? As the door unlocked, I hastily snatched a kitchen knife from my counter, stepped back as the intruder entered my house, my safe place. "Get away, who are you? Get out of my house," I frantically yelled. My voice quivered as fear engulfed my body. "Honey, calm down, it's me." They replied pretty calmly, too calmly. They spoke as if they knew me personally. I'd never met her in my life. No, I'm not your honey, go away," I yelled, fear stinging my throat. The woman stepped forward and I stepped back, and in disbelief. Primal instincts flooded my brain as my fight-or-flight responses came into action. I felt the knife plunge into her abdomen as shrieks of terror rose from the intruder. She kept screaming, "Oh my God, help me!" I listened as her voice grew fainter and gargled, and her breath became shallower. It was soon replaced with frantic wheezing as she violently convulsed. I stabbed and stabbed and stabbed. Blood splattered on my white shirt and my carpet, dyeing it bright red. She was completely still. My hand shook violently as I'd realized what I'd just done. Sprinted to my room, not looking back, and the metallic tang of blood covered the air. Just as I reached my room, I felt my legs give way. I tried to stand, but I couldn't, and it was as if I couldn't remember how to do it at all, really, and I dragged like myself, and my useless legs went to bed where I lay, processing what I'd just done. I stared at my wall when I noticed a small framed photograph. It was of me and the woman. She was in a beautiful white dress with thin cloth covering her face, and I was standing next to her in a black blazer. My attention quickly diverted as I listened to my horrified whisper quickly turn into murmurs. I couldn't speak, and I tried to call for help, but I couldn't remember my password. When I eventually logged on, I couldn't remember the emergency number. I dragged my body over to my laptop, desperately tried to log on. Frantically searched for answers as more of my memory fell slightly out of grasp. And that's where I learned about the marasite. It's a type of species that's ingested by the host, where it then feasts on the mind and memories. When you eventually thirst to death, it lays eggs which gnaw through your tissues and spread like wildfire. I'm using the last of my sanity to type this out before I forget how to spell, and soon all I know will be gone. Someone or anybody, please help them. What's wrong with me? That has to be a fiction story. If not, well, that was interesting. Am I overthinking, or is there a spirit in my house? So I've had a few weird things that has happened to me over the past few years. My house was remodeled before we moved in. I don't know much about the history. We moved in when I was in 3rd grade. I'm 18, almost 19 now. My brother passed away in 2013. I don't know if it's him, but I never noticed anything happening before that, well, but I was a child at the time. He didn't pass away in the house, but we have all of his belongings and his ashes in the house, if that means anything. Anyways, I've had a canvas fall off of my dresser with my boyfriend around. We're just sitting there and didn't dump the dresser at all. It's never fallen before or after that. My boyfriend instantly said my house was haunted after it fell, which made me pretty uneasy. I was out of town. My dad said that he walked into my room, and my Alexa was playing music. Which is weird because I don't have the app on my phone, and I've never used it to play music. My Alexa also will sometimes randomly switch to day mode in the middle of the night sometimes. Could be a programming error, though. My mom and I heard whistling in the house. This was when no one else was home. None of the windows were open, but I think we might have just been paranoid, but it really freaked us out. I was home alone and thought I saw a tall, dark figure in the corner of my eye. I legitimately thought it was someone standing there. I might have just been seeing stuff. And this one is the weirdest one. I used to wear 2 rings all the time. Took them off and set them on my dresser. I left to go take a shower for maybe 20 minutes. I walked back in and they were gone. I took everything out of my drawers and looked through everything one by one. I even moved my dresser away from the wall, and there was nothing. Then a month ago, my mom was cleaning off a shelf that had animal fur on it. She felt something buried in the fur. It was one of my rings. But I lost those rings years ago, and that shelf has only been up for a few months. Never had that shelf nor the animal fur in my room. I asked my mom to be real with me. Tell me if she took my rings. She said no and was genuinely freaked out about it. I looked through my dresser again and I can't find my other ring. And this one happened a few days ago. I was cleaning my room and I had a spinning holder for my makeup brushes. And at the corner of my eye, it was spinning slowly. I froze and was instantly freaked out. And the spinner sticks, so it's kind of hard to spin it. I was testing it out after I saw it. Takes a bit of effort to move it. Couldn't have just touched it without realizing it, but I don't think I did. Before I had this bedroom, it used to be an office room. We had a bookcase in it with lots of books. My mom said that same book would always fall off the bookcase and always face up. Never saw this happen, but it happened while she was standing in the room. I don't feel any negative energy, but I also don't think it's my brother if it is a spirit. And if it is a spirit, how do I find out who it is and what they want? And why are most of my occurrences with me and in my room? My household ghost talked to my niece and daughter. I, a 25-year-old male, moved into a new house in November. I'm renting, so I have a 12-month lease. And honestly, I love the house, but there's definitely something paranormal here. It started with small things, like lights flickering and my bedroom light turning off when it wasn't even touched. I chalked it up to electrical problems. Then, about a month into us living here, my 27-year-old girlfriend started saying she felt like something was watching her, and the house was creepy when she was alone. Allegedly. Excuse me. A few weeks after that, we started randomly hearing footsteps in our ceiling, like someone was upstairs. We would also regularly hear a singular knock on our front door every now and then, as when nobody was there. And also that light that would turn off in our room started turning off whenever we were getting dressed. Our cat started meowing at the ceiling in the laundry room every day, which is between our living room and the garage, and it also shares a wall with our bedroom. In January, I'm home alone with my 2 kids. S, a 10-year-old male, and E, a 6-year-old female. Back this up. Your son is 10 years old and you are 25. Alrighty then. Moving on. We were on the couch, which is on the opposite wall of our TV, and the TV was off. My son was telling my daughter and I a joke when suddenly, in the middle of it, the TV remote moved on the TV stand. It knocked over a Harry Potter wand to the ground. Our cats were asleep on the couch with us. It was unexplainable and freaked me out. The worst event was in March, during spring break. I had my niece, R, a 6-year-old female, over spending the night. And her and my daughter E were in the garage, which we've converted to a playroom. They were playing games. I was on the couch inside the living room. My girlfriend was outside smoking. My son was at his grandma's house. Suddenly I heard my daughter yell, "Yeah?" I didn't respond because I didn't say anything to her, so I thought she was talking to R. Then my daughter and niece both ran into the room and asked what I needed because they heard somebody call to them. My niece said it sounded like my mom. From her perspective, you know. I told them I didn't say anything. Nobody said anything. And they both explained to me that they definitely heard someone say both of their names, and to tell them to come here. They said it sounded like a whisper, but they were convinced it was my sister's voice, R's mom. I immediately called my sister and explained this to her because I was shocked, and these 2 little girls were both so sure of what they heard and were so scared that they wouldn't go back into the garage, or even go to get their shoes and toys. This is not the first time these girls have talked to the paranormal, unfortunately. My sister and I moved very close to each other in 2021, and I moved into my house first. The girls were 2 at the time, and my daughter didn't speak for the first 3 years of her life. But I caught her on the baby monitor talking to her ceiling in babble talk almost nightly. My niece spoke perfect words, and when they moved into their house, I watched my niece at my house while they moved their things in. A few days later, My niece told my sister and I that the demon that lives in my house came with her home to her new house. She explained that he got into the car with her and came home with her. This whole thing freaks me out. Saw a woman in white in my dream, recited Hunaman Chalisa, and never saw her again. Has anyone else experienced this? I'm originally from India, but currently live in Mexico. A few months ago, I had a really intense and strange dream that I can't shake off. I wanted to share it here to see if anybody else has had something similar happen, either in dreams or in real life. In the dream, I entered my bedroom like normal, but suddenly I saw a woman standing there in white clothing with long hair. Her presence felt off and eerie and heavy and disturbing. Instinctively, I lunged at her, trying to kind of drive her out or to confront her. But as soon as I did, she repelled me with some kind of a force, almost like I got quote-unquote yeeted, which somebody told me means thrown. Yeeted like a baseball straight into the wall. I physically felt the shock in the dream. At that moment, I don't know why, but I started reciting the Hunaman Chalisa, a Hindu devotional hymn known for protection. And as I kept chanting, I felt something shift, like I was gaining strength or protection. I launched at her again with this newfound energy, and this time, I somehow managed to push her out of the room to the window. I either threw her out or we both fell out. Not entirely sure. But as soon as that happened, I woke up. And here's the strange part. Since that night, I've never seen that woman again. Not even in other dreams. My house has felt normal and peaceful even. No lingering energy and no weird feelings. Has anybody had dreams like this, where you fight off a spirit or a ghostly woman in white? And has anybody used a mantra, like Hunaman Chalisa or otherwise, in a dream to protect themselves? I'm just trying to understand whether this was some spiritual experience, my subconscious, or something else altogether. Any insight or similar stories would be appreciated. You've all heard many. I'll never get used to that word. The Lady in Black. Still to this day, when me and my cousin talk about that night, we still have no clue who or what she was. Any ideas on what she was, or if she was just some high homeless person. But here's what happened. My cousin and I had snuck out from McDonald's, our own little rebellion. Two teens hungry for 99p burgers. The walk to McDonald's was a little bit far, but we didn't mind it. The night was warm and beautiful, so we just walked. We were talking and laughing, and after we arrived at the McDonald's, finished our burgers, we decided to leave and head home. Walking the near empty streets just after 4 a.m., our voices low, feet scuffing along the pavement. That's when we crossed the road toward the tunnel walkway near Tesco. We were about to step forward into the mouth of the walkway when we both stopped at the exact same time. There is a house just off the path. A narrow, crooked walkway led up to it, and in the front window, a cat sat staring out, perfectly still. We'd seen this cat many times before. He would always approach us on our late-night walks around this area. This was the first night that he didn't approach us, though, so when we saw him in the window, it made sense. He's just in his home, I thought. His eyes caught the streetlight just right, glinting gold like coins, Something about it felt odd, not wrong exactly, but not right either. We noticed only one street light on. We thought that it was weird, but it was a dodgy town, so we didn't think much of it. And when we saw her below the street light, a woman in black standing at the bottom of the house or flat. She was tall and unnaturally tall, lanky, like her limbs didn't quite belong to her. Her clothes hung off her like smoke, loose and shapeless. Her head was tilted slightly forward, as if she was watching the cat too. Or maybe she wasn't watching it at all, but maybe she was waiting for us. At first, we thought it was some random drunk staring at the big cat. She hadn't moved, not even a twitch. And then she did. She turned, not slowly, not unnaturally. Well, not naturally. She spun around in one smooth, unnatural motion, like a puppet on a string, and her face locked onto ours. Her eyes were shadowed but fixed, her expression blank, yet somehow furious. Her skin was pale and too pale, stretched too tightly across her cheekbones and pointed chin. The second she looked at us, the world seemed to drop. A coldness slammed into my chest, sudden and bone deep. My skin prickled and every hair standing on end. My stomach lurched like I was falling, but I hadn't moved and I couldn't move. It felt like time stopped, but only for a second. Then everything in us screamed, not out loud, not even in words, just run. That wild animal panic that lives deep in your gut. The kind you can't reason with, the kind that keeps you alive. We bolted. No warning, no signal, just instinct. Legs pumping, breath catching in our throats, the echo of our footsteps, loud in the stillness. Down into the tunnel walkway we went, the lights overhead flickering dimly like they might die at any second. The air was thicker down there, like breathing through wet cloth. Our footsteps slapped against the concrete, and we didn't speak, and there was nothing even to say. Halfway through, we slowed just enough to glance behind us, and she was there, still following. Closer. Too close. And she wasn't running. She was walking that same slow, deliberate walk. But somehow, she was nearly right behind us. Her arms hung loose by her sides, her shoulders stiff, and her head tilted slightly, like she was studying us. Like she didn't really need to run to catch us. Her movements were silent, not a sound was made. It made no sense. She made the tunnel feel longer than it was. We ran harder. Our lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. The exit was just ahead, the stairs leading back up to the street. We scrambled up them two at a time, nearly tripping, hearts thudding like drums in our ears, and I turned and she was there on the steps, still walking, still gaining. I didn't understand it, like how. We were running flat out and she had moved faster than a crawl. But there she was, her face still calm, still blank, eyes locked onto us like we were already caught. We hit the street and kept going, sprinting down the sidewalk, past shops and shuttered houses. The lights above us blurred and our feet thundered on the pavement. I looked back again. She was still there, not running, not stopping, still walking, and somehow closer. We didn't stop until we saw them. Two men standing near a crossing, smoking, talking softly under the weak glow of the street lamp. We made a beeline straight for them. Our fear was plain in our faces, and they looked confused and, well, startled even. And when I turned back, she was gone and vanished. Not behind a corner, not retreating, just gone. We wanted to chalk it up to her being somebody that was high or something. but I couldn't explain the fact that she had just vanished. She got too high. But I swear it didn't feel like she'd left. It felt like she'd just stepped out of sight, like she was still nearby and watching, just out of reach, waiting. And even now, when I pass that street, or see a cat staring from a window, I get that same cold twist in my stomach, that pressure in the air, that feeling that something unnatural is near, that if I turn too slowly or blink too long, she'll be there, still walking, still catching up. Possible mimic. I think that I have a mimic problem. I've always been prone to witness and experience paranormal activity all of my life, so I'm not easily scared or impressed. Backstory. My boyfriend, 32, and I, 33, he bought a house in the countryside almost 2 years ago. It's a huge house that has an apartment above the garage and an in-suite in the basement. I rent the apartment and my mom lives downstairs. The seller almost got arrested after the sale and flew the country. Well, that takes a lot of lift. The family that rented the whole house lost everything and got evicted before the sale. My mother and I get sicker every year since moving in, have the same problems. Herniated disc on the same area on our back and chronic pain that put us almost out every day. Nerves problem in the same leg and so forth. My boyfriend got anger issues big time. Now everybody take antidepressant. Also, every tenant who lived above my garage moved out in a way worse state than when they signed the lease. The first one got drug problem and got all messed up. Broken bones and all by ambulance. Broken bones given to you by an ambulance? Well, that's counterintuitive. Never came back. The second was a couple and the guy got violent. I just had news, and since they moved out, he sees a therapist and they've never been happier. Well, that's good. The latest became a friend and she moved out yesterday. It's not a real apartment, it's just 2 rooms with a private entry and complete bathroom. Close enough. Usually, tenants take the room that's right above the garage as their bedroom because of the toilet that is annexed to it. Fancy. Well, my friend took the one that is more on the backyard side. She's scared of the other one as she heard things and just didn't felt right. Once she went to this room to open the closet and fell just pure rage. It ended up with the police, and if it wasn't for me, she would have ended up in the psych ward and the baby taken by CPS. She almost beat up her boyfriend! ! Why a mimic? Last week I was in the chicken coop that's in the garage. I heard my mom calling me and my boyfriend's names. It was as if she was right beside me. She was on the other side of the backyard in the garden. She was confused when I asked her what she wanted because she never called me. I already did 2 cleansing in the entire house. Every spell jars I make don't work and just broke or get moldy. I practice witchcraft and I've been for many years. I think whatever haunts my house has been there long before me. I think it eats the people, housing of hill house style, that we are less touched by it when there are tenants renting the rooms above the garage. Want to get rid of it. I tried speaking to it and it didn't do anything. I have a new tenant and this one is an old boomer that had a rough life. I think he's going to cause many issues. Or the opposite. Might be the opposite. animals behaving oddly. This thing happened about 6 weeks ago. Initially, I didn't really think anything of it. Only moments later I thought, well, that was unusual. I wish I had photos or videos of this. I'm thinking there may be a way for me to get screen grabs with the help of the staff at my head office. And I'm a school bus driver, and one spring morning, late April, early May-ish, I'm driving my morning run. It would have been around 7:20 in the morning. It was bright, sunny, and clear. I was driving down a dirt road approaching my fourth stop. I noticed in the road just before my stop was a congregation of animals. A cat and her kitten, 2 rabbits, and 3 crows. They're all sitting in the road in a circle facing each other, like they're discussing something. As I approached, they all glanced up at me and moved off the road in different directions simultaneously. It wasn't until after I stopped to pick up my student that there's this thought, like, how odd was that? That afternoon, I told the young man I picked up at the stop what I had seen there in front of his house. The look he gave me was gold, a mixture of surprise, happiness, and intrigue, perhaps. It was really neat. He actually ended up moving the next week from that house. Now he has a bit of magic to remember it. Wouldn't exactly call this paranormal. I do have plenty of paranormal encounters, but they're all just stories. I have no evidence or proof. I can share these in another post if anybody's interested. This, however, well, I was in a school bus, and the school bus has cameras, and as long as the bus is running, the cameras are recording. So I could potentially ask somebody at my head office if they would be willing to look at the footage for my run of those days. Give me a screen grab. Even just to confirm that I'm not crazy and that it did happen. The experience hasn't left me. I think about it at least 3 times a week. It wasn't scary or spooky or traumatic, it was just odd and unusual. The kind of behavior I imagine now is responsible for the beloved stories like Peter Rabbit or Winnie the Pooh. Yeah. I got summoned to purgatory last night as a guide. I don't normally dream. I usually go to sleep and wake up with no recollection of any dream whatsoever. Occasionally I'll get a nonsensical dream about my daily experiences. Last night was different. My dream was so vivid and cohesive, and I truly felt like I was serving a purpose there. I was brought to purgatory to be a guide to people that had trials there. All of these people were attempting suicide or on the brink of suicide. They were between life and death and were faced with different trials. If they passed their specific trial, they got a second chance at life. If they failed, then they passed on. My job was to give hints to them about how to pass their test. They had to realize what in their life could help them out of their situation. I was able to save 2 people, but I lost 1. The first person I helped was a teenage girl. Her specific trial was an obstacle course set in a bog type of thing. The water wasn't water, but was a slime that could cling to your skin, slow you down if you touched it. She was being chased by a shadowy being. Her only goal was to not be caught. I was helping her, though, and this going over and over again until she realized that she was able to face the monster with the help of her friends. She woke up from her attempt in her bathtub with a pill bottle in her lap. She'd tried to OD, but earned her second chance at life. I could only speculate, but the monster was either her mom or bullies at school. I think it uttered the phrase, "commit to gun mouth," at one point, making me think bullies. Never heard that sentence in my life. The second person was a man, mid-30s, and very obviously had a manual labor job by his build. He was digging in a mine, but kept getting buried by cave-ins. In this one, I told an anecdotal story about how family is one of the pillars of healthy life, and he was able to realize that he could use his family, spirituality, and other aspects of his life to lean on, just to kind of help him out of the trouble. In his case, for everything he realized, he could rely on it, physically manifested as a pillar to help hold up the mine, the strongest being his wife and daughter. She was about 3 and cute as a button. He woke up in his recliner with an empty bottle of Jack at his feet and a revolver in his hand. He cried for a bit and he went to hold his family, and I'm guessing his trial represented all the things in his life he was trying to deal with and felt overwhelmed. The last guy in the room was suffocating. Literally darkness. I was there trying to get him to realize that even the smallest of things could be the light of your life. He had a tuxedo cat that adored him. He was supposed to realize that even small things could light up his darkness and provide warmth. Would have literally spawned a light, then he could see the way out. But he didn't listen. The darkness got him and snuffed him out. I saw him jump off the top of a building, and he passed on. His trial was supposed to represent his struggle with depression. Well, pretty sure anyways. It was a surreal experience to have something like that. And if you were one of the people that I helped above, well, keep it up and I believe in you. I feel a bit paranoid after my last time going into the woods. I don't know if I'm just overreacting or not, but I am a bit spooked. For context, I'm a young woman who lives in the Ozarks. I've always enjoyed hiking and being in the mountains. I know there's folklore and spooky stories surrounding the region, even including mentions of cannibals and cryptids. But I personally have never really felt fear in the woods until recently. The end of my yard is where the woods begin, and I'm not unfamiliar with the land. I've spent hours out there. There's a few small walking paths from, I'm assuming, hunters or people who go back there to fish. The other day, however, I felt so off about my walk. I felt watched, like something was behind me or perhaps next to me in the trees. I just couldn't see it. I went past the gate and into the woods regardless, telling myself it was normal instincts. Birds watching me constantly when I'm out there. I was only a few steps in and climbed up the deer stand out there to calm myself, thinking that being up high would ironically ground me, if that's the type that's kind of a ladder and you attach it to a tree. However, I started feeling something tapping on the metal ladder. Thought maybe it was nothing but my imagination, but I heard it over and over again, tapping in silence and then tapping again. Couldn't figure out what was causing the noise. I just felt weirded out and went back to the gate and turned back into my yard. But I heard a twig or branch snap. Nothing in sight. Maybe it's some animal. I've had encounters with deer, though. When they spook, I always hear them running after. The ground's covered in crunchy leaves. So I hope it's just a small animal that I wasn't able to really hear flee. I felt pretty spooked and quickly headed back into my house. The night after, I had a vivid nightmare about being chased by something I can't fully describe while alone in the woods. I just know that it was something, some type of thing or person trying to get to me. And I've just been a bit scared since. I really want to calm myself. I've never had feelings like that toward the woods. I've lived around this area my entire life. I don't know quite how to get it out of my mind, even though I know it was probably nothing. It's been a year. A little backstory. I've always been a bit sensitive when it comes to paranormal things, but mainly it's dreams. Over the last year, I've become scared to walk around the house at 3 a.m. I know it sounds cliche, but that's when most of it starts and ends at 4 a.m. My family moved into the home 7 years ago, and within the past year, I've had the most encounters ever. Nothing harmful has happened, but it's more of a I'm here type of thing. It first started when both me and my husband heard something talking. Nothing was on, and we assumed it was one of the kiddos' iPads. We went back to sleep and were wakened by a loud boom, assuming something fell. Ow. There's nothing. So it's been months at this point. I have an art studio downstairs, not fully a basement due to the design, but I take a break to use the half bath. Out of habit, I close the door. Then I heard 3 knocks at the door. Assuming it was somebody, I opened it quickly. Nothing was there and everyone was asleep. Maybe I shouldn't have opened it. And my house was built in the 70s, so you can hear creaks on both sets of stairs. No evidence because you would have to run fairly quickly. Weeks later, you can hear voices and sounds like 2 people are talking, but not loud enough for you to make out what they're saying. When approaching, it goes away, and again, nothing that could have done that. My husband said it sounds like a video game playing on an iPad. You can hear it, but not make it out. No iPad or electronics were on to even play something. My son has heard the man as well. I've had small things go back and forth, like an unplugged wire or a single leaf on a fake plant. And this week, Monday actually, 3 a.m., my senior dog began walking back and forth on the ottoman, like he's following something. He usually jumps on it when he's playing or excited. No tail wag, just going from end to end and calling his name. Still did it, so I decided to get up and let him out, and he didn't potty, so we went back in. He then laid with me, and by that time it was close to 4 a.m. I'm not sure who or what it is and why, and I believe it's a man and a woman. I sense a woman, while the man is only felt when they're talking to each other. My husband's childhood home was haunted, but he chose to ignore it. I can't. I don't want to make things worse, but it does freak me out at times. I saw my grandparents. Alright, here it goes. So far, I've only told a few people because I was around 11 when I had this dream. A little backstory for my grandfather on my dad's side. His dad got sick and passed when I was 5. Now, fast forward back to age 11. I had a very vivid dream, standing outside of my grandparents' house. The front door opened and it was bright and, well, unnaturally bright. In the door frame, I see my grandfather and grandmother. They look at me and then embrace each other. After the embrace, they walked further into their home and the brightness was gone. I woke up and my mom's sensitive to these types of things, so I told her my dream and explaining details and what they wore and hairstyles and facial expressions. They were younger, I'm guessing around the age that they moved in that house. They had 10 kids. Yeah, 10. But it was the 50s and 60s, east side of Detroit. My mom believed me and I just went to school. A little shaken up about the dream. Like, why did I have this dream? Unfortunately, I found out after school. My dad called me and his voice was cracking, telling me my grandmother passed. I could almost drop the phone, but I knew my dad needed me. So we talked for a few more minutes and exchanged I love yous and hung up. At the funeral, portraits for her throughout her life were all over the room. Pictures I've never seen. Spent time with my grandma, but not that much at her house. The one that stood out to me was the picture of my grandfather and grandmother. They were wearing the same clothing as in my dream. I was questioning myself. Maybe I remember seeing a picture or how my grandfather looked. I couldn't describe him before that dream, yet after I could name all very detailed features. Even then, why did I have that dream that night? And why were they both in it? All the same details as a picture I'd never seen. I got sick from a town full of witches. Doctors found nothing. An old man in a hidden house cured me. My stepdad's side of the family is from a province I won't name for obvious reasons. People there are different. The place has a reputation. Locals say that there are Mangkukulam living there. Folk witches, both good and bad. Everyone in the area is careful about how they act, and what they say and who they look at. Even my stepdad warned me, always be respectful and never let your guard down. Anyway, we went there for a short visit. One afternoon, I bought a sealed bag of chips and was walking and snacking when I felt somebody behind me blow air directly at the back of my neck. It wasn't just wind, it was like somebody exhaled on me. I turned around, no one was there, and just a few old houses and quiet streets. I brushed it off. A few hours later, I started feeling really weird and dizzy and heavy. I lost my appetite completely, and my sense of taste disappeared. I couldn't enjoy food and couldn't sleep well. Just felt drained. My chest was tight, but no fever. We went to a hospital the next day for blood tests and vitals, and everything came back as normal. Doctors told me I was fine, maybe just stressed or tired. But I knew something was wrong, and I felt off, and I wasn't the only one who thought so. My stepdad immediately took me to somebody he knew, an old man who lived in a hidden house far from the center of town. No signs, no lights, just a path locals apparently already knew. And this guy was quiet and calm. Didn't ask questions, just told me to sit. Placed his hands on my head and muttered something in a language I didn't recognize, then blew gently over the top of my hair. He handed me a small shot of some kind, some bland-tasting oil, and told me to drink it. I don't even know what was in it, but I followed along. Nothing happened instantly, but about a day later I started feeling normal again. Appetite came back and taste returned, and the fog in my head lifted. Whatever that old man did, spelled prayer or placebo, I don't know, but it worked. I'm not saying I believe in kulam or spirits, but I can't explain what happened either. I just know that something invisible messed with me, and science didn't catch it. Be careful out there, especially if you're visiting places with deep-rooted traditions. Some things can't be explained, and sometimes the old ways still have power, whether you believe or not. I'd let that guy blow on my head. Just wouldn't be any hair.
Welcome to the realm of the inexplicable. Paranormal M is your gateway to the most spine-chilling, real supernatural stories. Subscribe and enable notifications to keep up with our latest discoveries and encounters with the unknown. Shadow person followed me from Warsaw. I went to Warsaw for work in November of 2019. I met a girl and we kicked some stuff off. After ending up in my rented apartment and going to sleep, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to find her packing her stuff, which was on a chair in the bedroom. She walked to the door and I started asking her, "Where are you going?" Thinking maybe it wouldn't be a nice move to just try and walk out in the middle of the night. I couldn't see much detail since it was dark in the room, just the black silhouette of the girl. She then walked to the door, but stopped and turned toward me and seemed to proceed to just stare. I started calling her name, thinking she's sleepwalking, until I hear her in my right ear. Looking over, she was still next to me in bed, slowly waking up. I looked back at the girl I saw, and she was still there too. I freaked, lunged to the lamp in the bedside table, turned it on, and she was gone. I've been told about sleep paralysis, but the thing was, I could sit up, move, and think clearly. Now flash forward to the start of 2020. I was back home in Almere. a city close to Amsterdam. And ever since I moved into my new place, I hear footsteps around the house. Once, while on a video call with my colleague in my quote-unquote office on the first floor, right across from the staircase, I could hear someone or something bolting up the stairs, straight through my headphones. After half a year, it didn't bother me anymore until 2 weeks ago, when my current girlfriend was here, not the girl from Warsaw, by the way. I had the same experience I had in Warsaw. This time, however, I thought more clearly and I grabbed my phone. I turned on the flash and I aimed it at the figure. When pointing at it, it was gone. I then moved the flash away and I could see it again. This really boggled my mind. The figure then seemed to bow down, I believe, but proceeded to go downwards until it just disappeared into the floor. Every now and then I find chairs moved. I wake up next to the sound of my office chair rolling, and I still hear the footsteps. The Lost Mine. A small town in the mountains, known for being built on the idea of riches for mining, has had its fair share of different personalities. Some of those souls had moved on and others have gotten lost. This town had many of mining structures and oxidized mountains of minerals all abandoned. But one name sticks out to me. My friends, and a good amount of others in the town too. One mine that we call Sarko. This mine is about a good 20-minute drive past the other abandoned structures and up into the mountains. You get to a main gate that veers off into a dirt road. This takes you to an old tailing pond. A huge field elevated above the ground to hold water, where there's a lot of excess water, mind you. Across the field are multiple abandoned structures that sit lonely, right next to the inlet of the water. Me and my friend have never been out there, but we always heard of it. We ventured out to see it, and also look for paranormal experiences in the process. As we drive in, there's a herd of deer watching our every move as we get ready to sneak our way over. We start walking down the hill, and then that had us just jump over a river, then a steep hill to get into that flat field that was once a tailing pond, like I said earlier. We get to the top and right away notice that the moon is lighting up all of our surroundings. We could see a shadow casted from the mountain behind the buildings. So in other words, a dark side and a bright side. The walk was about 2 football fields away from the start of the field. As we walked over, we watched the floor to watch our step. We walked what felt like 50 yards and my friend tells me, "Hold up, we're already here." This spooked us out because it felt like we had teleported right to the base in a matter of a few steps. It was as if once we stepped into the shadow, the distance of walking was extremely tampered and felt unreal. We were looking to communicate with spirits, and we would hear taps on the building that would be a response to our questions. After that, we weren't experiencing too much paranormal stuff, so we decided to leave. As we were walking out back to the steep and long slope, I started to hear an extra footstep behind us, almost as if we were being followed out or even escorted. I told my friend and he heard it too. In my mind, I wanted to debunk it. I wanted to see if it was all imagination. So I stopped on a dot, and sure enough, right behind us, one extra footstep as soon as I stopped. We looked at each other in shock, and I took my friend and said, "Let's stay calm and just walk out normally." Once we started climbing down the steep hill, it felt as if the presence of something had just left us. And as we were leaving in the car, the same deer herd watched us drive out, and a little farther down, one deer jumped in front of the car, like the last go away from the spirits, if you will. My creepy dorm room. I had an uneasy feeling after my parents left me in the dorm room this past September. The first few weeks were uneventful, no trouble sleeping. A detail that's important to this story is my room decorations. I brought 2 tiny strings of mini Himalayan salt rocks to hang in my room. One was wrapped around my mirror and the other on my bookshelf. One night I woke up around 4 a.m., rolled over to the side that faced my room. I noticed the Himalayan salt rock lights around my mirror glowing. The light flickered a few times before going out. I got out of bed, flipped on the light, and inspected the battery compartment. Sure enough, they were switched off. It was weird. I decided to take the batteries out and deal with it in the morning. I managed to fall asleep. Fortunately, I had one of the scariest, most vivid dreams. In the dream, I woke up and saw the lights hanging on my bookshelf flickering. I remember getting out of bed and going to turn off the lights, but froze when I heard a voice from behind me. I don't remember exactly what it was said, but it was something like, "Uh-oh, not again." I woke up and I was completely terrified. I raced to turn on the light and refused to go back to sleep for the rest of the night. I kept glancing over at the mirror, because I've heard mirrors can act as portals. I covered the mirror with a blanket, which made me feel a little bit uneasy. It gets weirder. At about 5 a.m., I decided to text my boyfriend. Strangely, he texted me back about 15 minutes later. It was weird that he was up at such an hour, especially since he was up late the night before on the phone with me. I FaceTimed him to explain exactly what happened. After my story, I asked him why he was up so early, and he said that he had a scary dream and all he remembers from it is being upset and crying. He told me that he had this uneasy feeling and an urge to check his phone. That's when he saw my text and texted me back. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it was just a dream. I'm home for winter break now, and I'm thankful to get a break from that room and not be afraid to fall asleep. A strange light keeps stalking me. I've always believed in aliens, despite never encountering any myself, until one night in July. These strange occurrences happened about 2 or 3 years ago in the southeast region of New Hampshire. I still can't explain what I saw, and neither can my mother. My mother and I got off work and driving down this back road. We were about 5 to 7 minutes away from our house. I'm driving. We're approaching a hill that leads up a long, narrow road through the woods. I see a bright light hovering about 20 feet above the house, perched on top of the hill. My mother notices it too. I turn off the radio and roll down the windows. No noise. I drive up the hill and notice 2 cars stopped off to the side of the road looking up at the sky. I pass them and take a glimpse through the trees. I see a large, square-shaped metal object. There are circular lights shining from the bottom. My mom and I turned around in the first driveway that we could find. 30 seconds, maybe less. We went back and it was gone. I was freaked out but excited to have a UFO story of my own. The excitement gradually wore off the more frequently the sightings became. My friend and I were walking along the beach across from my family's restaurant. We saw a light hovering near the lighthouse. We assumed the light had stopped revolving since it wasn't moving, but suddenly the light jolted forward and began flying around manically. It dove behind the house alongside the beach and disappeared. At this point, I've had another person in my life experience with separate events. I knew it wasn't just a figment of my mom or my imagination. My mom and I saw it about once a week for the next month after that. The lights would be hovering in the distance, completely silent, and would disappear once we were too close. We chose to ignore it. As long as the light kept its distance, we felt moderately safe. Then came the close encounter. My mom and I got off work around 8 and returned home with a trunk full of groceries. Our condo's at the very end of a cul-de-sac, and at the other end, a tiny hill with a line of tall trees. We were bringing bags into the house, and I notice a light off in the distance. The light starts getting closer and closer until it's above the tree line, which is about 100 feet, give or take from where our car is, and it stops. My mom is super frightened at this point. I tell her I'm done being afraid, and I stand there waiting for the light to approach me. As I begin walking towards it, it zooms off to my left and disappears above the forest tree line. I was shaken. The light had stopped and seemed to be observing my mother and me until we took notice. Since that summer, we've never seen it again. I guess we don't really expect another time, but we just chalked it up to maybe being a drone. We've tried to explain it, maybe a helicopter, but there was no noise. A plane wouldn't stop moving. But a drone maybe, but that still doesn't explain the uneasy silence. We began to think it was trying to abduct us, or maybe it already had, and we just have no memory of it. I think I might have had a visit. So I'd like to share something that happened to me when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I'm 26 now. So to set the context, I was back in England living with my family in an old Victorian house with my sisters and my mom. Just us girls, and I loved the house. I never felt spooked or whatever in it. But one night, I was in bed ready to sleep, and all of a sudden my bed cover went perfectly neat and flat, like no bumps, creases, nothing whatsoever. And then loads of symbols started to appear fast. I can recall vaguely what they were. It is really hard to explain. When I try to rethink it through, I get all uncomfortable and I kind of feel sick if I concentrate on what I saw. So then it all stopped suddenly, and I felt a weight on my feet as if someone was sitting down on my bed with me. So I was petrified and not moving, like as if I were stuck, not able to even shout. I then found myself surrounded by a bright light, and I had all these people leaning over me. The way I explain it is, you know when you're getting ready, maybe for an operation, and that you're in the operating room and everyone's waiting for you to fall asleep and start the actual operation? They're all there, looking down at you, exactly like that. Well, this was too much for me, and I leapt from the bed and jumped down the stairs. 4 by 4, ran from the house screaming, "They're gonna get me!" My mom grabbed me before I could get into the road, and I can't really remember what happened after that. I was talking about her with this yesterday, and she actually told me that this went on for 2 or 3 nights before actually stopping. The hole in my room. My house has had portal problems for as long as I can remember. We don't have a haunting per se, since we believe it's a vortex of some sort for spirits and entities to cross through, so they come and go. But most stay a while before leaving, if they ever do. There's a cemetery up the street that I frequent often, and we speculate a possible connection between the two. I decided to compile a select few stories from over the years in case it may be of interest to someone, because it sure as hell interests me. My chest was getting very tight just typing this out. I'm aware I over-explain things, but I think I'd rather provide more information than needed rather than less. Obligatory, I'm on a mobile, so sorry if any formatting issues occur. You know the drill. Background. My siblings, a 27-year-old male and 24-year-old female, and I, an 18-year-old female, were raised in the same house since birth. My brother has since moved out twice, while my sister and I remain at home with our parents. We're all pretty intuitive and sensitive when it comes to energies, particularly my sister and I. Ever since we were young, we individually decided that there's some sort of portal in our basement, which is now referred to exclusively as the hole. The hole resides in an unfinished part of the basement, which was used for storage for the first 22-ish years of my parents owning it. It's an odd indent built into the wall that goes from floor to ceiling floorboards, just wide enough for a person to stand in, behind where the wall would be if it were built right or straight, however you'd like to put it. It's in the far corner of the room, the only one not visible from the door. When it was storage, the room connected at the opposite corner from the hole to our laundry room, like the corners of the room overlapped and formed a high doorway between. Activity. Whenever I was young, for as far back as I can remember, I was petrified to go into the room whenever my mom asked me to get her something or anything like that, or even just to go to the laundry room without quickly switching on the light in the storage before running from the door as fast as possible, which was still extremely nerve-wracking for me, especially little me. On the occasion that I didn't turn on the light, I could feel something watching me intently from the opposite corner. Twice I saw what I think were glowing eyes in the dark. Around the same time as the aforementioned was occurring, I was having repetitive nightmares for years until I was probably maybe 9 or 10, I believe. It was the exact same spot up to a point. I was being hunted by a man with half of a face through an abandoned hospital. The only difference is that every night he'd inevitably catch me. He would torture me to death in a new way each time, seemingly more sadistically each time than the last. I'd wake up just as I began to feel what I'm pretty sure was my life fading away. It felt so real, so painful. I'd wake up with marks occasionally that corresponded to what had actually happened in the nightmare the night before. Take note that this was when I was 5, possibly younger, roundabout till about 10-ish, and my mother was careful to shelter me from any violent media or concepts when I was young, so these ideas shouldn't have been imaginable for me at the time. When I finally worked up the courage to tell my mom about my nightmares, she prayed over me and blessed me with holy water. Catholic moms, man. And within a week, with her continuing to pray for it to stop, they suddenly disappeared, and I noticed that the entity was making me petrified downstairs was either gone or not showing itself anymore. We came to the conclusion later that whatever it was had attached itself to me and was feeding off of my fear of it through the influence of my dreams. She thinks it was a demon, but I'm not sure of that. Small things happened over the years, but from the time I was about 10 to 13, it was nothing remarkable. Yet when I turned 13, my brother and his girlfriend moved in after she got pregnant in order to be able to provide best for their child. We converted the storage room into a quote-unquote apartment for them. He finished off a small square of the laundry room to be my niece's room for the time, so the two rooms were no longer openly connected. We had barely ever entered the room in years, but it still had a very heavy feeling after so much time. While moving stuff around, activity like things going missing and popping back up, and electronics turning on and off began to start up. Whoever was here at the time, they didn't like being disturbed very much. After my brother and near sister-in-law got settled in, it died back down, partially because they felt the hole was too ominous and covered it with particle board that remains there to this day, but stayed active enough to let us know that something was still there. It would turn on flashlights that had dead batteries in them from the year before, or require a hard push to turn the button on and off. And when you go to grab them, sometimes it would set my niece's electronic toys in the middle of the night, knock on walls and whisper, stuff like that. We just learned to get used to it after a while of being in the room often. This past summer, my brother's family moved into their new place and moved into the apartment to escape my traumatic old room upstairs, which is a whole different issue itself. Of course, as they began packing stuff up, the activity got more noticeable again, as well as when I was moving my stuff in. I've been here since about July, and I think I've experienced more activity in the room in the past 4 to 5 months than all of my life before combined. I began not only hearing them and seeing their influence on electronics more and more, but sometimes seeing figures and seeing them interact with non-electronic objects, like opening and closing the doors in the basement when no one's looking. In the beginning, the first I saw was when I rolled over at night and glanced toward the foot of the bed, toward the hole, where I saw the silhouette of someone shoulders up for a split second. It didn't make me feel scared, but unsettled me for a moment, as anyone would if they saw someone in the room at night. The entities would listen when you talk about them in the house. We can tell. So I talked to my sister about it the next day and said something along the lines of, "It's kind of rude of me not to have a couch in my room yet. He could have just sat in the corner of the bed if he wanted." Well, the next night I came back from the bathroom, opened my door to a dim light of my wax melter, and I swear up and down that I saw a dark figure sitting on the corner of my bed before flipping on the light after a split second. Obviously, there was no figure when the light was turned on, but there was an impression of a butt on my bed sheets, as if someone had just been sitting there. This confirmed that they definitely listen to what we say in the house, at least, but they seem to be more responsive when not being talked to directly. So it's easiest to just talk about it with my sister to influence their behavior. Every once in a while, I'll feel a new presence appear. One of the most noteworthy newcomers was a real dick to start. In the beginning of it, I'd feel a massive feeling of dread that someone was standing right behind my door to my room, about 6 feet tall. After a few times of just standing, he switched to walking down the stairs right by my room, but only the bottom 6 stairs, and then proceed to stand at my door for minutes. This mostly happened at night, and when I told my family about it, my mom took me out of the house to tell me that she'd heard it too, and I'm not crazy. She thought it was me going downstairs, but she waited to hear my door open and close, but she never did, because who she heard wasn't me. I think the worst time that he got me was the last time he tried to mess with me. It was just about noon, and I was watching TV in my room while I was home alone, when I heard the sound of someone walking down the bottom half of the stairs. He stood at my door for a minute without making a sound, before starting to slowly jiggle my door handle. I thought I was going to have a panic attack because the only exit had an unknown entity on the other side of the door. I sat frozen for at least 15 minutes, just watching my handle jiggle, until it stopped when my dad came home. For some reason, the fact that it was in the middle of the day made it feel even more threatening. I got really fed up at this point, and I started ranting loudly to my sister about how he's all talk and isn't going to do shit. How he's just wanting to intimidate me and needs to learn his place in this household. I honestly expected a little bit of backlash, but he only walked down the stairs one more time that night before stopping, and hasn't happened since. Most recently, a couple weeks ago, my mom decided to try to pray away the portal for no reason, because they hadn't caused anyone harm or annoyance in a long time, and I honestly enjoy their company. I've never wanted to banish any entities or their means of transportation if they haven't done anything harmful. Since she made the first prayer, they've been very upset with my mom and more shy around me compared to before. The day or two after she prayed, I was near the top of the stairs making pizza rolls when my mom went downstairs to do laundry, singing on the way. When she was halfway down the stairs, my bedroom door that I'd left open slammed closed. The door swings open rather than closed, and it was done with force. They wanted to make sure that she knows they're upset with her. The next night when she's taking a bath, when the towel hanging behind her head fell into the water, she said in all the years of living here that hasn't happened to her once, but didn't think much of it until she went down to reach for the towel on the floor and saw the hand towel across the room pulled to the floor. To say the least, she wasn't pleased with being bothered during bath time. Since she decided to make this prayer, I've noticed they will not be active while I'm in the room anymore at all. But practically as soon as I step foot outside, There's tons of movements and sounds starting up. I'll come back and my door will be open when I left it closed, or vice versa. And sometimes things will even be moved slightly before I return to the moon. I'm not sure why they're feeling the need to be so much more active when there aren't any direct witnesses at the moment. I don't get the feeling that they're mad at me. They're just upset that someone tried to close their portal that's probably significant to them. I tried my best to coexist with them peacefully and be kind. And it kind of feels like she ruined the bond, which I know sounds insane, but it's a kind of a weird situation that I'm in, and I've also learned to accept. I care for them and their well-being regardless of their physical person or if they're not a physical person. And she offended my guests. Weird frickin' book. So about 10 years ago, in 2011, I moved out of my family's house into my first apartment. This is a small town of Colorado, with its only real claim of fame being a big hole in the ground. I moved in with a buddy of mine who I knew in high school, and all was well for a while. My friend needed to move out of state, leaving me to a cycle of replacements to cover his part of the bills. The last roommate I had almost no contact with, but he managed the money and mostly kept in his room at the back of our house. Eventually, one day I get a knock on the door. Police with a warrant to step inside to his room, cuff him, and leave. I still don't know what it was about, but I haven't heard from him since. The police interaction was the last straw for my landlord, and I received a 3-day court-mandated eviction. While cleaning his room, I removed mostly trash and a toolbox that was mainly screwdrivers and what seemed like a sketchbook or a journal that he might have bound himself. Until recently, when I found it on top of a closet that I was expanding, I'd completely forgotten about it. I have no idea how it made it through the cleaning and the subsequent moves over the last decade. I can think of at least 3 places I lived, not to mention couch hopping, yet somehow this book made it through? I'm not sure where to start researching this thing, but the penwork is so detailed and painstaking. I felt it must be something of note. The book itself is mainly blank, but it has some writing, English, backwards, other stuff that looks hieroglyphic. Whatever help would be appreciated. Black-Eyed Kids and Wendigo. This story happened to me about 12 years ago. I was around 24 at the time and I worked hospitality, so I'd be later at night when my friends and I hung out. So at around 9 o'clock, my friend and I decided to go out for a drive, someplace we'd never been, just get in the car and go. I offered and wanted to drive because my mother was out of town and I was using her Mercedes. It was one of those early 90s E-bodies, the ones that were like big piles of heavy steel, a real tank of a car. I only mention the car body because it becomes relevant later in the story. He happily agreed and we hit the road. We lived near Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the time. Good old Wisconsin where you get a lot of really good stories that I've noticed. It seems to be a pretty paranormal state. Either way, we drive north out of the city and we drive for about an hour when I see an exit that I don't recognize. So I decided to get off there. There was nothing at this exit other than cornfields. No gas station, no restaurant signs, no visible light of a town in any direction. So we're in a place that we don't recognize. But that was the whole point. Just driving to go nowhere because the speed limit was 35 and we were in no rush. The moon was out enough that everything was pretty visible too. About a mile into the cornfields, we could see 2 kids on the right side of the road. We comment on how weird it is because there's no housing or stores or even lights on the horizon. Plus it was 10:30ish at night. Naturally, there were 2 larger guys. so we didn't really worry about anything, so I slowed down a bit so we can inquire if maybe their car broke down or maybe if they were okay. As we pulled up, I noticed the kid in the front's clothing. It was a stained cream-colored tweed-type shirt with real tattered sleeves and overalls with only one strap. He appeared to be maybe 12 years old. The second kid was taller, wearing a red flannel-type shirt, the old-time looking khaki pants. However, I could barely notice the taller kid standing further behind the smaller one, because as I pulled up noticing the clothes, I got to see the whole child, we'll call it, fully, and his arms were to his side, slightly raised, almost in that iconic zombie way. But his eyes, I couldn't take my eyes off of his, and I did my best to mutter to my friend. "You seen this too, right?" His eyes were pitch black, blacker than the night, but easy to see as he stood there staring back at us. I didn't know what the heck I was seeing, but I've never been so frightened in my life, and I did have several odd experiences that have left me unable to deny that there's more to this world than what we understand. So we're stopped for a moment, locking eyes with whatever this thing was. It was no child, it was evil. I have zero doubts about that. We quickly agreed to go, and fast. We're not going to inquire with them. This was straight out of the Twilight Zone, and I remember the hitchhiker, and that's not happening tonight, no sir. So we go and we clamber between ourselves. What the fuck did we just see? What the fuck was that? Still no signs of homes, just open cornfields. How these two kids could be there, I don't know, but I believe that they weren't even kids. So I keep driving and we get out of the fields into a windy wooded road, shortly after maybe about 5 minutes. Here in Wisconsin, there are just random historical markers displaying whatever year this happened in with all the information on it. And I can only mention that because I passed one on the curve, so I glanced at that. As I'm driving through a curve going about 45 miles an hour, a creature walks in front of my car, my mom's car, and as I saw it, it was nothing that I've ever seen before. Its spine was tall, it stuck above the hood ornament as I hit it. It was a gray color and looked like nothing I'd ever seen. It had a very tall arch in its spine, almost like when a cat hisses and goes on its toes, that kind of shape, but in a very tall, gangly creature kind of way. I hit this thing straight on the tank of the Benz. My friend is freaking out at this point. I stop immediately, but now we're both a bit scared from the children of the corn, and now this thing is literally within minutes of another. We decide getting out's not going to happen, but I decide to stay in the car locked, but I use the car and its lights to see what we hit and make sure whatever the hell it was, that it was dead. And I just needed to know what it was that I saw. I drive in tiny circles, backing up and forwards looking for this creature, but after checking every inch within 100 yards and not seeing a thing, including not even a drop of blood where I hit it, and I hit it straight on with a Benz, making contact with its spine, body, and head anywhere. That was unnerving, and although I wanted to check my mother's car, that would have to be dealt with further down the road. We were not going to get out of there, so we decided to head home at this point. 15 minutes later, before I got back home into the freeway, and I needed to get out and see how bad the car was. As I got out to check, and I did this quickly as I was not taking any chances, not tonight, I noticed my grill was busted in, but nothing too bad. So I made sure that it was secure and got back in as quickly as possible. My friend decided to stay inside the car. Recently, I heard of the black-eyed kids. That freaked me out a bit. I didn't know that it was really a real thing. I thought I just saw a couple of demon kids or damned ghosts. I didn't really know what to think. Till this day, I've looked through tons of photos of supposed cryptid beasts and mythological creatures looking for what I hit. And the closest I've found is some Algonquin drawings of Wendigos, and they were very close to what I believe I saw and that I hit that night. It seems to me very odd that both things could happen so close to another and not be related. Possibly it was an evil area. Possibly a ley line. I don't know. I'd like to point out I've lived in Wisconsin a long time, and it was not a deer or a coyote or anything else. What I hit was nothing native to known Wisconsin landscape, and neither were those horrid kids. I'll never forget either of those faces, and I just hope I never come across them ever again. Found a grave with same birthday. Suddenly my car stops working. So my friend and I were driving around, just going wherever. Earlier in the car, she mentioned that it would be fun to watch a movie at the graveyard sometime. Now, hours had passed and the sun had set. She didn't have to be home for a bit, so I asked if we should check out the graveyard nearby. The graveyard was closed, but you could get your car up a little hill and walk around the gate. So we're checking this place out, and it's relatively small. No mausoleums or anything, just graves. I start to read the names on the graves, to maybe pay my respects a bit, and I find this group of graves, all with the same last name, so probably a family. These guys were born in the 1800s, so I was excited. And then I found a guy with the same birthday as me. His death date was in February, but I don't remember the day. Kinda wish I did. So fast forward, we get cold and decide to head back home. We get in the car and my steering wheel is so hard to move. I assumed it because we were maybe just in a grassy and muddy area, and I started to slowly back down the hill. The graveyard was directly off a busy road, speed limit around 45. But it was late and there weren't many cars out, so I assumed that I'd be able to back out and just head on my way. Spoiler, nope. I get down the hill and I'm going to turn around and go forward, but I'm realizing that the gas isn't even working and I'm in the middle of a lane. I push on my brakes, which are really hard to push on, and stop my car. I'm turning the key and there's no sound. I'm starting to freak out now. The road's 2 lanes, so people are passing me, and I have my hazards on, but I don't even know what's going on. P.S. I'm a new driver, and I don't know squat about cars. Eventually, some guy comes around and asks if everything's okay, to which I reply, "No, do you guys know about cars?" They did, and told me my battery was dead. Looking back, if my battery was dead, the car would sputter. But I was panicking, and it sounded plausible. So they helped me get my car out of the lane and off to the side of the road. I called my dad at this point, and he tells me that the key's out, and let everything turn off and start the car again. I do so, and it works like a charm. So I drive home and immediately take my dog and go upstairs. He, my dog, is freaking out for some reason. I hop into bed, and he jumps with me, but the hair on his back is sticking up. He then proceeded to get up and lay down a bunch. Tail between his legs, I calmed him down. I've been informed that my car wasn't working because I forgot to turn on the engine, but I've never only turned on a battery before, and I distinctly remember turning the key while on the road. Maybe it's all coincidence, and I'm just kind of hoping that it is, but I'm still kind of spooked. My tormentor from childhood paid me a visit at 3 o'clock in the morning over 10 years later. When I was between 8 and 12 years old, I grew up in a very haunted house. I believe that there were many spirits there, and I got a glimpse of one who I always believed to be demonic. The best way I could describe its appearance was that it looked like a mummy from the movie The Mummy, but it had huge white eyeballs with small pupils. I started experimenting with using crystals. I would wear them around my neck for protection. I wore rose quartz, amethyst, and black onyx. Not at the same time, but separately. I was very careful about where I purchased them too, and I made sure to cleanse them. I never wore them in bed, but the one time I did, I regretted it. I fell asleep wearing my black onyx. Around 3 a.m., I'm jolted awake because I had a bad dream. I look at the side of my bed and I saw the same demon-looking creature standing beside me, hovering over me, smiling with a face that looked pure evil. I started freaking out and screaming, and I woke my boyfriend up. When my boyfriend woke up, it was gone. I got out of bed and shut off the light. A few weeks later, I saw a shadow person pacing back and forth at the foot of my bed. Then I saw and heard a shadow person walking down the stairs after I caught them staring at me. My amethyst crystal completely disappeared without a trace, but I got rid of my black onyx and haven't experienced any activity since. I still have my rose quartz, and I've had no problems with them. I'd like to also mention that when I was younger, when I saw this thing for the first time, I lived in southern Pennsylvania. Now I live in western New York, so I think that thing may have followed me, but I don't know why I'm seeing it again for the first time in over 10 years. Have you ever worked in a haunted nursing home? The unit I'm currently on seems to have the most activity from my own personal experience. I've worked on a lot of the units, but on this one I've seen the most. Almost every single day I see shadow people. I catch glimpses out of the corner of my eye, or I just see a shadowy figure straight on. I work evening and night shift, and strangely, I've experienced more on the evening shift. The unit I work on is also the COVID unit, so that might be partly why it's more active. The COVID wing consists of 2 very long halls that meet together at a door that leads to a kitchen area, where there's also another residential room. Kind of a weird setup, but hey, it works. My coworker was behind a double door one night, taking care of one of the sick residents, and she'd gone out to the kitchen area to take off her PPE. She saw and heard 2 children running around playing, but it was late at night and we weren't allowed to have inside visits. Turns out everybody at work says they sometimes see 2 children, and that means someone's going to die. And it's true. We have a chapel in the nursing home for the residents, but it's behind 2 sets of double doors, and the residents can't get in there on their own due to codes and locks. There's a series of stairs behind the first set of doors. And everybody has repeatedly seen a bald guy sitting in the chapel late at night through the window of the hall, looking into the chapel. We had a resident who used to be a child molester. One night he woke up to hysterics and crying, absolutely unconsolable. He said there were children surrounding him, standing by his bed and laughing at him. He died the next day. I went into a resident's room late one night during rounds at 3 a.m. I was working on the dementia and wander risk unit. Standing next to the resident's bed, and she asks, "Who's that man standing behind the curtain?" I didn't think much of it because she usually hallucinated, but within an hour or 2, residents from different units passed away, and the resident that I was with, their roommate fell out of bed and got hurt really bad. Lights turn off and on by themselves constantly late at night when everyone is in bed. Did we enter another dimension? About a week and a half ago, me, my manager, and another colleague of mine were driving around 1 a.m. to try and find something that we could get some food at a drive-thru maybe. Every 24 McDonald's appeared to be closed, so we ended up driving 30 minutes away to try to find somewhere that was open. Eventually, we gave up and pulled up at a service station around 2 a.m. It was eerily quiet, and we weren't even sure if it was open due to COVID, but we got out to check anyway. We walked into the doors, and it was mostly shut apart from toilets and a small shop with one lonely worker that was sitting behind a till. All the fast food places were shut and lights off. We used the toilet, and my manager recalled that she'd actually been there before. There was another part of the service station across a bridge that could be open, so we went off and searched for that. We found the walkway connecting to the bridge at the 2 flights of stairs. The bridge was covered with windows surrounding the outside, showing a view of the motorway beneath. My manager said that the bridge was giving her the creeps, and I had to agree. It was long and narrow and dimly lit, with nobody else around. We decided to run as fast as we could to the other side, and honestly, I was unsettled. We made our way down the stairs, and at the end, we were met with dead silence. Once again, we were faced and close to restaurants with dim lighting. There wasn't a single other person around, and we were walking aimlessly around a large, unoccupied space. A feeling of unease settled in. We couldn't take much more of the creepiness, so we ran back up the stairs, back across the bridge as fast as we could possibly manage. We caught our breath once we were back to the other side and commented on how strange the area had been. After that, we got snacks from the single open shop and walked back to the car to have a smoke. But the odd, chilling feeling remained with us. We all agreed that we all felt it, and as though a lot of time had passed, despite the whole thing taking about 20 minutes, the car park was empty and the air felt off. Like the pressure had shifted. That's the best way I can describe it. We went home after that and tried to sleep it off, but when we woke up, things weren't the same. Colors look different. Nothing feels normal or right. Things are the same and yet completely different. It's hard to describe. Life just feels more like a dream, and we all have a sense of being there in our day-to-day life, but not being present. We struggle to connect our minds to our physical bodies and be present in the moment. It sounds crazy, but it's been a very real experience for all 3 of us. And we all agree that this started when we left the service station that night. Then the really weird thing happened tonight, and this is the moment I decided to hop on Reddit and try to get some clarity. So far, Google has nothing for me. Anyway, tonight we're dealing with some pretty morbid stuff with a friend of ours that's suffering with her mental health badly. We left her with the police and my manager and my colleague, and I set off driving to our home. We discussed that night at the service station again, noting that all the bad things that were happening with our friend and her mental health started after that. Other unpleasant events had followed as well, and we pondered the significance of our creepy adventure and the bad things that were happening now. I said, "It's like since that night, nothing's ever been the same." And then the weird thing happened again. We both started crying simultaneously, as if someone had turned a tap on for the both of us. Water started leaking out of our eyes at exactly the same time. We were so freaked. I felt a wave of sadness and emotion, but it wasn't enough to make me cry, and my colleague never cries, ever. We're sure now more than ever that something happened that night. We just don't know what. We've joked about ending up in another dimension, and I don't normally believe in anything like that, but this has me questioning it, because I'm honestly convinced that something isn't right, and we've encountered something that's changed all 3 of us. We just don't know what. Even as I write this, I feel off and a tad tearful. I have no idea why. I've been watched my whole life. 27. I've been thinking about putting this here for a while, but I've been delaying organizing all the events on paper. There's a lot. I keep remembering more and more every time I pass over this with a red pen, so I'm sorry if it's grown into a huge post by the time it sees the light of day, so to speak. Basically, throughout my life there's been a figure or a few following me from house to house, sleepover to sleepover, and even appearing at work and school sometimes. I know what you're thinking. I promise I'm not crazy. It would be impossible for other people to react to these events too if they were all in my head. And though I try to be as investigative and rational as I can whenever something strange happens around me, check the windows, doors, locks, check for intruders, etc., there's still a huge number of instances that I have no answers for, nor does my family. The earliest memories I have of the ghosts was as a child. When my mother remarried, she moved in with him and his 2 children, younger than me, both of whom have experienced things too. It was a small 2-bed, 1-bath. Outside of the room where my step-siblings and I slept was a small corridor, which basically was only big enough so that when you entered it, leaving the kitchen, the bathroom was on your left and the bedroom was on the right. That's it. And that's the spot I first remember seeing a man who would stand just outside the bedroom door every night. He was at least 6 feet tall. He had boots on with filthy pants that wrinkled loosely about his legs. I never saw what he was wearing up top, but I did get the impression that he had great big eyes. I was too afraid to look at him directly. I still don't like to think about that face. We'd have the door cracked a bit for the kitchen light to come in at night, and he'd suddenly appear and block out that light. He'd just stand there, looking at us through the door. We'd call out to our parents, but there was never anything there to show them by the time that they arrived from the master bedroom on the other side of the house. This and the typical shadow people stuff, like leaning into doorways, as well as items disappearing, carried on for the next few years. Whenever my cousins would come over for a sleepover, they would become nervous upon entering the house. And if they just knew something was wrong, they started showing me pictures on their new camera phones. Remember when we called them that? And they were pictures of orbs. I told them it was just dust. They'd sometimes ask me if anyone else was home because they could hear voices coming from the next room. By then, I knew we had something paranormal going on for certain, but I didn't believe them at first, because how could they have experienced something new before me at my own house? Well, soon after, I started hearing my mother call me into the room, and it turned out to be empty. Voices, check. I started to think that I was losing my mind at 7 years old. We were also starting to spot people walking around in rooms if the door was slightly cracked. People as in new figures, not just the man from the doorway. People walking in circles aimlessly or waving their arms around. Why are ghosts always doing the strangest things? I once saw a woman with blonde hair in a red dress with large white polka dots, and they leapt into my parents' bedroom from the living room where I was watching TV. She didn't approach the door. I didn't see her beforehand. She just appeared mid-stride and just sailed into the next room and disappeared. I just saw the tail end of her dress. I could make out the blonde hair from my peripheral vision. She made no sound. My whole family's Hispanic, no light-haired people in our circles at the time, and there's no way our parents had anybody over at our house, especially that tiny house, without everyone even knowing. About 2003, I was maybe 9 by then. We were getting ready to move into a bigger house, which was way better suited for the needs of our family. I was looking forward to literally geographically getting away from that house, the ghosts, the dread of nightfall. It seemed like a nice prospect, until my first day alone in the house. My parents were very trusting of us kids and left us at home during breaks during school. We were watching TV, and then my stepbrother and sister and I started hearing a clapping sound. It was coming from one of the back rooms. Scared, we went to look, but there was nobody there. Clapping? Yep. One person clapping loudly, as if to congratulate a performance, but there was nobody back there. And it was my stepsister's room that it was coming from. The door was closed, and no, we did not open it until our parents came home. It should also be noted that my stepdad's brother moved into the small house shortly after we moved into the new house, and no paranormal activity has been reported there since. Happenings still happened regularly at the new house. However, sightings through doorways, full conversations in empty rooms, and electronics turning on and off on their own, typical ghost stuff. And we grew up, and we were just kind of learning to shrug it off. It became a thing for any one of us to suddenly declare that they'd just seen something because honestly, it happened that often. Here's a side note. We had a dog while we were at this new house, and the dog's name was Nemo, who shortly passed away under unknown circumstances. He just died out of nowhere. We buried him in the backyard and put a cross there, but removed it shortly after the new dog started peeing on it. Okay, back to the story. The night we first got the second dog, Charlie, I put him in his little kennel, which was situated at the foot of my bed. I latched the door shut and climbed into bed. Shortly after, I heard Charlie's collar jingling, so I assumed that he was awake and started to whimper. Not thinking, I patted on the bed next to me like I used to for Nemo, and shortly after I heard claws rough scratch the carpet. You know, like when a dog kicks off the ground when it jumps, and then the bed slouched where he landed. I felt small paw prints circle around, and a little body flop down on my bed by my feet. It was then that my heart started to flurry as I remembered that I had closed and locked Charlie's kennel. There was not supposed to be a dog on my bed. So I hopped out and turned on the light, and lo and behold, Charlie is still in his kennel and there's nothing on my bed. I didn't sleep that night, and needless to say, that little guy and I became best friends after. I'd hold on to him on nights that I was really scared. Not that anyone's asking, but as of writing, 3/31/21, he's 16 and still running around. Old for a miniature schnauzer. Probably not related to the ghost stuff, but it's abnormal enough for a dog of his type, so I thought it's worth pointing out. Around this time, circa 2009, something new had started to occur. I called it the glaring, because that's what it felt like. It didn't feel like I was being watched, it felt like I was being stared at heavily. Picture walking into a busy room and everyone stops what they're doing and just glare at you. No talking, no breaking eye contact. Glaring. Now imagine that room is always the darkest and coldest one, despite having the largest windows. It felt thick. The glaring happened in several rooms sporadically, but it almost always presided over the front living room, which is why our family had taken back the den space more warmly. Instead, I've just sort of grown up and have since moved out, and so far as I know, they still don't use that front room much. It was also at this time that I started feeling the bottoms of my shirt get pulled on as if a child was trying to get my attention. I also remember an instance when the glass sconce over the hallway light was thrown across the hall. I had just walked past it to go to the bathroom, and I was just closing the door. I heard a humongous crash. I opened the door and saw pieces of glass spinning across the floor. My mom asked, "What was that?" And I just told her to come look. That sconce was attached to the wall in such a way that it looked like it had been lifted out of the metal setting, which was screwed into the wall and then pushed out from the wall in order to become loose enough to even come close to maybe falling down. Or else it would just fall back into its metal setting. I know I hadn't closed the door, so it couldn't have been vibrations from a closing door. We still don't have answers. And I've returned to that sconce fixture time and time again, trying to figure out how it came off of its rest. The bulb is still bare to this day. I never replaced it. Ugh. Now, I mentioned before that we had been seeing figures leaning into doorways or rooms peeking at us. But one time particularly jarred me. It was a night when my step-siblings were there and my family and my parents had stepped across the street to pick me up at my neighbor's yard. So I was alone. I was studying on my bed without my glasses on. I'm nearsighted. And I start detecting one of those figures from my peripherals. It gets real quiet around me like the air got sucked out of the room or something. I look up with my fuzzy vision and I see that familiar shape pull its head back and hide on the other side of my door to the hallway. "Oh, hey there, ghosty," I say, and I return to studying. Then it comes back again, and this time when I look up, it doesn't pull back immediately. It hesitates for a second, and before it quickly vanishes behind the door, I saw its face. No details because like I said, I wasn't wearing my glasses, except for the most prominent features that I could see. Great big eyes. I freaked the F out and called my parents to come back home because of the ghosts, and they came home right away. At the time, I must have been 15. Almost every night this entire time, I'd awaken in the night to look out into the hallway and I'd see that man just standing there in the dark. Other times I could hear footsteps in the dark entering the hallway at the kitchen and heading up to the doorway of my bedroom and then stop and start walking in place. Pat, 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 pat. Shoes tapping the tile floor, just behind the slightly cracked door. I could see the shadow figure out there going up and down with every step, always looking directly in my direction, as if they knew I was watching them too. God, that freaks me out, just remembering it. I remember thinking how illogical it was. Seeing things that weren't there must make me crazy, right? I moved away from there when I was 19 and moved in with my partner, whom I'll later marry. We've been in several apartments and have rented rooms. Every single place we go, there are those figures. There are voices. There are things going missing. My partner and I once found a small child-sized handprint on the sliding glass door of our third-story apartment. We have no kids and no kids visited us, and we definitely cleaned it since we moved in. We also have seen a man sitting on our bed, tying his boots from the corner of our eye on several occasions. When I was 25, I think, I reconnected with my biological father and he told me stories that he remembered from when I was small. It was just him, my partner, and me having breakfast at Denny's or IHOP or something. It had been since I was 3 or 4 years old since I'd seen him. He was telling me about the times that I'd wake up at night and he'd pull out some crackers and cheese for me to eat as a midnight snack without my mom knowing. But I digress. He continued into some weird things that happened when I was little. He said that on several nights, he would come into my room to check on me sleeping and he'd hear me talking as he approached. As he got closer, he said he almost thought he heard a voice say something back to me. That's when he charged into the room and asked who I was talking to. He said that I didn't know, and out loud he just told whatever was there to leave me alone and leave us in peace. I guess it did, until he was out of the picture and the new stepdad took his place. That story sends shivers down my spine, not because I remember it, because I don't. But in the back of my mind, I always knew that there had been something watching me. Ever since the corona lockdowns have been a thing, and now that we're spending more time at home, we're noticing less and less activity going on. While it's been extremely unsettling journeying with these entities, none of us have ever felt at risk of harm. And so I never sought help to rid ourselves of them. It's just surprising now, that's all. It's been so many years, we still hear talking and movement in other rooms. The sounds of fabric like someone's clothes are moving around in the room. It can be heard sometimes in midday. It's all just nuts. Received a special Christmas gift. When I was young, I got married to a guy that I'm going to call Jack for the sake of the story. Jack's mom is involved in the story, so I'm going to call her Mary. Jack and I got married young, and divorce ensued a few years later. He had developed some issues that I wasn't equipped to deal with, including constantly threatening suicide if I didn't give in to his demands. The marriage was emotionally taxing and toxic. That being said, we loved each other very much. When I left for the last time, he did as expected and prescribed emotional blackmail. Jack said, as I'm sure he's been saying to others, "I will not live without you." In a weird way, I believed him, but I wasn't sure how it would all really play out. Besides, that wouldn't happen to me, not really. Fast forward to 10 years post-divorce to this man. I hear he goes downhill. It's heartbreaking. I'm devastated. I try to reach out. For all the issues that there were still tremendous amounts of love. However, I had to move on. 10 years later, I'm remarried. I have kids and a happy little suburban family. On my 7-year wedding anniversary to my then current husband, he divorced me. Yes, this death was a factor. I get the phone call that would change my entire world. Jack had chosen my anniversary to slit his own throat. I could hardly process, and I fell apart. So we had just moved cross-country, and I drove red-eye back to my hometown to see Jack's mom, Mary, on Christmas Day. See his room, his home, his things. Say goodbye to him and maybe try to get some closure. Mary had let very few people in to do what I was doing, so I was very honored and grateful. I got the courage to ask for a memento as I had nothing left to remember him by. I knew that I needed something. She let me stay in his room for a while, talk to him, look around. I wasn't sure what I would really take, but I knew when I saw it that it would speak to me. Jack, among other things, was very OCD, a literal diagnosis, and his clothing was kept impeccable. It appeared that he had done laundry and there was a stack of precision-folded clothing on a chair. I decided I might like a hoodie, preferably one I could remember him wearing. I knew the things on the chair were probably newer items, but I looked through them anyway. Mary talked with me the whole time, looking at each item with me. As I suspected, I found nothing on the chair. Then I looked through his closet and trunk thinking I might find older items. Nothing. Mary and I continued. I was happy to be there and say goodbye, see his things, his life. I told Mary thank you. I told Jack that I loved him for probably the 12,000th time. I was thinking of leaving. I, of course, had been crying and turned one last time to look at his room. I could smell him, I could hear him, and I just needed one last look. I knew I would never be in there again. When I turned around, on the top of the stack on the chair was a hoodie I'd bought for him when we were kids. I'd know it anywhere. He wore it constantly. He loved it. I know for certain, and Mary was with me, that hoodie was not on that chair, and I had not seen any of it in his clothing. I felt a gush of love and warmth, and I knew without a doubt that Jack was there in that room and had gotten a Christmas gift. I had gotten the Christmas gift. I still had a hard time wrapping my mind around it, even all these years later.